We have so many treasures. Our district governor in 1968-69 has had an impact on all of us. The Boy Scouts, the academic world, this very university. He has served Rotary in just about every possible assignment. Author of the ABCs of Rotary, and as I was saying, his humanitarian service has been never ending because real happiness is helping others. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Rotarians, guests, Rotary's greatest treasure, from the Rotary Club of Moraga, on your feet, people, let us welcome past Rotary World President Cliff Dochterman.
Frankly, this is all just an act. I don't really need this stuff, but you know, when you get real old, they expect you to be frail, and so I try to fulfill the obligations of a 90-year-old guy. And so, thank you for that kind invitation. Thank you for Christine's nice words about the oral interview. You know, I just enjoyed 14 hours of talking to a pretty girl. I didn't care about the oral history really at all. And but it's great to be here. You know, I should give all the formalities, Governor Fred and President's Rep Jim and special guests and past governors and future governors. And, you know, Rotarians come and go, but past district governors just accumulate. And there's so many of them here, I'd just take all my time for that. But when I spend a little bit of time here, I really have a lot of memories. I'm gonna try to stand up. If I fall over, just go home. And I have glasses that I talk through. You do something with that? Anyway, when I come back here and spend a little time on the campus, it just brings back so many memories of the 25 years I spent here on the campus, not trying to graduate. I was a student, and then I was an administrator for some 20 some years. And looking down here on Sproul Hall, I recall a day back in what they called the free speech movement. When President Clark Kerr, I was assistant to the president, Clark Kerr, we had an arrangement. He got all the money and I did all the work. But in any event, he was president, and the president's office was over on the west side of the campus. And he said to me one day, he said, there's something happening over on the Berkeley campus, and I'd like for you to go over there and see what's happening. Little did I realize that there was something happening here on across the street here, and it had a whole era of impact upon the higher education community. However, today I'm not going to talk about the free speech movement. That's all written in the oral history. And most of the stuff about the free speech movement was written by people who were involved in it, from the taking over police cars and stomping in the street and giving lectures. And there was very little in the history about somebody who was on the other side of the administration. But today I really want to recall my journey into Rotary, which began some 60 years ago, right here on this campus. 60 years ago, I was working with a movie producer here in town, John Siegel. And John was a photographer doing documentaries and things, and I'd written a documentary about the University of California. And John was here that day, and I was showing him around spots, and we were doing photography. And finally he says, "Oh, it's nearly noon. I've got to go to Rotary Club of Berkeley. Why don't you come and go with me to the Rotary Club luncheon today?" And at that time in my life, I didn't know much about Berkeley at all, but a free lunch was something I really enjoyed. So I went to Berkeley Rotary Club. A few months later, that friend John Siegel told me that since I seemed to know so many of the Rotarians and had such a good time, he had proposed my name for Berkeley Rotary. Unfortunately, John said, the club has turned you down, but they didn't think your position in the university was quite high enough to belong to Rotary. Well, I knew that the standards of getting in Rotary was high because the president and all the deans of the university belonged to the Berkeley Rotary Club, which at that time was 230 members, one of the largest clubs in the district. And so I knew that the standards were high, and it didn't bother me. About a year later, Johnny called me and he said, "You've moved up in the world and you're working in the president's office now and everything. I've submitted your name again to the membership of Rotary." And however, he said, I have to report that they have rejected you again, because they've already got 35 members of the university faculty and administration in the Rotary Club, and consequently they felt there were too many in the higher education classification. I says, "Oh, that doesn't bother me a bit. I'm used to being rejected by Rotary." Well, another year passed, and John was persistent. He called me again, and he says, "Rotary has a new program called the Additional Active Member, and we found somebody on the campus who had proposed your name as additional active member, and they've now accepted you. Dick Erickson proposed your name, and that's it. 3 strikes and you're in." Well, that simple little action by that persistent Rotarian started a whole new dimension in my life. I became a Rotarian in the historic Berkeley Rotary Club. Most people don't realize that Berkeley was the 3rd Rotary Club in the world. They had Chicago, then they had San Francisco, and the 3rd Rotary Club was called the Tri-City Club, Berkeley, Oakland, and Alameda. And so the Tri-City Club eventually broke off, and Oakland, as they often do, claimed the title of number 3, and Berkeley had to take the title of something else. That was in 1917. Now another example of a memory that happened 6 years later, after I had served as club president of the Berkeley Rotary Club. And that was, as I said, a 230 member Rotary Club, and I was proud and pleased to be a president of Berkeley. At the club's annual Christmas banquet up at the Claremont Hotel, I went to the restrooms during the dinner and had a little conversation there with District Governor Ed Pitcher. He was from the Oakland Club. They were all part of this district. And I went back to the table and sat down with my wife, and I said, you know, a funny thing happened. Ed Pitcher said that some of the past governors have been considering me to be a future district governor. My wife says, you stay out of those men's restrooms. You know. But soon a new highway opened up for me in my Rotary travels, and I became a Rotary district governor. Now a rare experience happened as I went through the next steps, the training program for incoming district governors. I should note that one of my tasks at the university was the opportunity to become acquainted with some of the many distinguished alumni of the University of California all over the world. And I used to have contacts in various major cities around the world. Rotary, a Rotary contact in London, and one in Paris, and one in Hong Kong. And I had a contact alumnus who I would often call in Tokyo. And at that time, in the early 60s, many of the faculty members were just kind of beginning to want to do a lot more overseas travel because jet planes were coming in then. And so I would put them in touch with the prominent alumni. I say that only as background because I went to training to be a district governor. And the training at that year was in Lake Placid, New York. When I arrived at Lake Placid for the international training of Rotary district governors, all the governors know that is called the International Assembly, I immediately saw my friend, a Cal man from Tokyo, Cal graduate George Togasaki. And it happened that George Togasaki was the incoming president of Rotary International. So George said, well, I'm glad to see that you're going to be one of my governors this year. And I said, well, I'm going to try. And he said, I'm glad you're going to be on my team. And then he said, oh, by the way, would you like to serve on one of the international committees? I said, George, I haven't even become district governor yet. He said, oh, that doesn't make any difference. He said, I have a committee I'd like to appoint you to. And so, as a Rotarian with barely 7 years of Rotary membership, I was serving on my first Rotary International Committee, a committee called Training for District Governors. And this was, how do you improve the training? Frankly, that was 1968, and it hasn't improved a heck of a lot more. I look around and see the governors that we have here now. But the committee met, and our big contribution to Rotary was bringing it into the technological age, that each training session should have an overhead projector. Now that was modern times at that time. And I served a rare opportunity to serve on an international committee because of a Berkeley Cal graduate who gave me that opportunity. By the way, do you realize that this university, the University of California, has produced 4 of the world's presidents of Rotary International, more than any other university in the world? George Togasaki, Stan McCaffrey, Rick King, and myself. You know, the very fact that someone gives a Rotarian a chance to serve is an extremely significant feature of Rotary. You see, there's thousands of men and women have tremendous capacity to serve this organization. But unless somebody identifies, each year we get 560 or 30 more district governors, and normally they pick out of that group the leadership of Rotary. However, if one of the leaders did not invite you to serve in a capacity or offer you an opportunity or point you to ask you to do a task, we often see the tremendous talent that we have in this great organization not being put to work for Rotary. And I realize that in this past 60 years, these opportunities have been given me because a Cal graduate invited me to serve on a committee. I remember so many little experiences as I think back over Rotary. I remember one night, an evening in it was about 1974. I had a call from the Rotary International President, Clem Renouf, who was calling from Australia. And he said he was appointing a special committee of 3 Rotarians to create a new dimension for Rotary International. He said, we'd like to do something different and start. And he invited me to become one of the 3 members to design a program for Rotary, which they called the Health, Hunger, and Humanity Program. 3 guys coming together from 3 universities, Arkansas, Tennessee, and California. The new idea was to see if Rotary could take on some huge programs much better, because up to that time, Rotary activities was in your community, doing little things in your community, Christmas boxes for needy people, building activity facilities for youth in the community, recreation fields, and so many other things of that nature. There was tremendous objection to this particular committee, Health, Hunger, and Humanity, because the leadership of Rotary felt that Rotary always did it their way, and that was projects in their own community. And we aren't in corporate business. We don't do big problems bigger than a club or a district can undertake. And so there was tremendous criticism of the 3H committee, and many of the older leaders of Rotary claimed that the 3 of us on that committee were going to destroy Rotary. And so I said to the committee one day, with all the opposition to this 3H committee, we've got to have an immediate success, or next year the next president of Rotary will throw it out and we'll still go back to just little projects in our community. We've got to find a success story that can happen right away, otherwise 3H is scrapped. So we looked at the immediate success for an immediate success story. One proposal, we had, maybe 15 or 20 proposals from around the world of what they might do. And one of them came from the Philippines. And the idea was of Rotarians saying, we have the highest incidence of polio in the entire Pacific Rim. And if we could only buy the vaccine, we could mobilize all the Rotarians and other people, youth groups and everything in the Philippines, and we could immunize all 6 million children in the Philippines. I said, that's it. That's an immediate success. We could get it done before the end of the year, and we could have a success, and maybe 3H might continue. So that was the project, that we would have the success and keep the program. The vaccine was purchased. Rotarians mobilized the nation, and 6 million youngsters in the Philippines were protected. And that, my friends, is the simple origin of the great program we now call PolioPlus, immunizing all the children of the world. You see, there was no great big committee that decided this is what we ought to do, or we have a 3-year study, should we take on polio or something. It was a simple job to keep a program going before the new officers killed it. In any event, it took nearly a decade from then on till 1987 before the eradication program was going in full force, and there's a lot of steps that I'll not even mention there. But its humble beginning was simply to complete a worthwhile project and retain the 3H program from disappearing. Now our polio program is probably the greatest single humanitarian program ever undertaken by a non-governmental agency. And it has touched the lives of millions of people, and thousands of Rotarians have had a part. Now, take another memory. Perhaps the most lasting Rotary memory started one afternoon when I was sitting in the president's office in Evanston, and at that time, 1992, 93, we didn't have fax, or we didn't have internet or anything. We went through the Daily Mail, and we got a letter from a district governor, one of my district governors in Austria, Ernst Rag. Ernst Rag, he says, you know, our district, I just thought you'd become district governor and you visit the clubs, write the reports, and from then on you'll be a past district governor the rest of your life. He says, but something happened. He says, I've got a civil war going on in my own district, in Bosnia, Herzegovina. People are fighting. We've got thousands of refugees leaving Bosnia. And he said, we're trying to do everything we can. They're coming into Croatia, the other part of our district. He says, is there anything you can do to help? And the local Rotarians, we're providing food and clothing and blankets and medicine for the refugees. But could other Rotarians around the world help us? And then he had a PS on his letter. If you can't help, I'll understand. But please, Mr. President, don't appoint a committee. So I didn't appoint a committee. I got on a plane, flew to Croatia. I'd never been there, and flying on Air Croatia was an experience itself. In any event, Ernst Rag met me with a couple other Rotarians, and we got into some cars run by the United Nations that supposedly were protected cars, and they had signs on them, don't shoot here, or something. I don't know what they all said. But we went down to about 30 refugee camps along the border of Croatia and Bosnia, and we immediately saw great needs. So many old people, so many little children, all the middle-aged people were out shooting each other in a civil war. I immediately pulled out the word to the Rotarians of the world, and in the next 5 weeks, we had plane loads of food and clothing and blankets and medicine, everything that they needed. Were pouring into Croatia to a little town of Zagreb, Croatia. A little Rotary club of 30 members. Each day, at tremendous risk, would take what they found to these refugee camps. Thousands of people being covered. Many of the refugee camps would house 3,000 or 4,000 people and eat whatever they could and cook together and try to keep warm as the winter was coming on. Over in Germany, they filled up 10 Mercedes vans, as much as they could pack in them, and 10 Rotarians drove them all the way from Germany across Italy, across Austria, across Croatia, right to Zagreb, and said, you keep the vans and use them to distribute stuff each day you get into the airport. Canada Airlines was the greatest help of flying stuff there from all parts of the world. I vividly recall a reporter from Croatia, and when we were in Zagreb, and he said, who are you helping? The Bosnians, the Muslims, the Croatians, the rebels, who are you helping? I says, I don't know. When you see a little kid that's starving, freezing, you don't ask them what's their nationality, what's their religion. We help them because we're Rotarians. And that's the kind of thing Rotary does. Well, when the year was over, I received a letter from the UN Refugee Commission that thanked Rotary for the thousands and thousands of dollars. In 5 weeks, we collected $8 million sent to the Rotary Foundation. It says, we don't handle short-term projects. You got to keep the money 3 years. I said, they'll all be dead in 3 years. They says, well, we don't handle that. I says, I don't care. I go around the Rotary Foundation. I'll get a banker in Austria who'll collect the money. When I was over there, I says, if we set up a bank account, how can I be sure that the money's not gonna be wasted or spent? And they says, wait till this afternoon. And they brought into the room 3 of the most steely-eyed bankers I've ever seen in my world. They had white collars so high that I could hardly see them. And they said, we will count the money and take care of it. And they did. Every dime was counted. And I said, I'd like to put my money in those guys' bank. And the United Nations said, thanks, Rotary, for what you did for the refugees. We estimate 100,000 refugees were prevented from dying, starving, and freezing in the winter of '92. And that's one of the memories of Rotary I always cherish, because it was the second largest project Rotary has ever conducted in a matter of a few weeks, next to the polio program. Well, I'm sure that every Rotary president carries some favorite memories of the International Convention, which they planned and presided. I was pleased to plan the first convention in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, in 1993. My theory was to pack the opening session with everything you possibly can put into a conference, because every delegate attends the opening session, and then you'll never see him again. So that was the opening event. And I brought Ernst Rag from Austria to give a first-hand account and thank the Rotarians for the valuable assistance of helping the refugees in Bosnia and the lives of Rotarians. And then I told the story of Tony Zeno from New York Rotary, who was sitting in his house one day reading the Sunday paper, and he read a story about a little girl in Uganda who had been badly mauled by a hyena. And he says, we could do something. And they brought that little girl to a hospital, and they had dozens and dozens of operations. And out of that one activity of one Rotarian was started the Gift of Life program of bringing youngsters from remote parts of the world into the best hospitals of the world that Rotarians would donate and sponsor them and give them the health saving. And over 10,000 youngsters have been helped by that one program, Gift of Life, started by the New York Rotary Club and Tony Zeno. And I said, where is that little girl? This was 30 years later, and we found her and brought her to the stage. We demonstrated the value of this humanitarian project, Gift of Life. And finally, the third activity we brought onto the stage that night was past President Carlos Canseco, who was president from Mexico, a physician. And he came onto the stage with polio vaccine, and we had selected a child who would be the 500,000 or millionth child as the high point of Rotary's PolioPlus program, and there on the stage, the 500 millionth youngster got the 2 drops of polio vaccine. Carlos told me later, he says that was of his dozens and dozens of years of Rotary, putting those drops in that child's mouth, because we often say the program of polio would never have gotten started if Carlos hadn't gotten behind it in his year, 1983, 84. And so that is that memories of that conference and those 3 people demonstrated the great humanitarian service that Rotarian is doing, not once in a while, but every day. The next morning after that opening session of the conference, I found at my door, stuck under the door, was a little note. And I picked it up, and it said, "Dear President Dochterman, it's now 11:30 at night, and I just returned from the opening session of that district conference of the convention." He said, "The performance of Rotary I saw tonight was beyond measure. It's always not only the actual work of Rotary International, but where the work comes from. It comes from the heart. It's given without hope of any personal reward other than the satisfaction of knowing the real happiness is just helping others." The letter said, "It amazes me." He says, "I've been an exchange student in Australia for the past 6 months. I grew up in South Africa, and for the past 18 years, I think the prejudices I have and have seen are the basis of my humanitarian beliefs. But tonight, you put into words and pictures everything I've always striven to express, but not quite managed. It was like my dreams come true. I have in the past believed that most things which man does on earth are rather futile, because even evil always seems to triumph. But this thought was proven completely incorrect tonight. Tonight I saw goodness and kindness and something so beautiful in action, my entire philosophy has been changed. Thank you. Thank Rotary for giving me a glimpse of the other side, where sunshine is. I know I wish to follow the path which leads to real happiness by helping others. Yours in the Youth Exchange, Gavin Russell." I'm sure that young man said what Rotary is better than most. Rotary works on the other side, bringing sunshine where there's darkness. Perhaps one of the most lasting memories of every Rotary president is the rare opportunity to meet world leaders. The protocol is when a world president travels to a country, the Rotarians try to make it possible for the president to meet with the president or the king or the prime minister, a rather high-ranking official, to visit the nation, to sit and talk with the President of the United States in the Oval Office about Rotary is more than a formality. It's an impressive experience to be in the Oval Office for any U.S. citizen. To hear President de Klerk of South Africa personally expressing to me his gratitude for Rotary for not turning our back on South Africa during the challenging years of apartheid. These are conversations you don't easily forget. Many heads of state have a tremendous respect for Rotary International. They gladly arrange an official visit with the RI president. I recall a private visit that I had with the president of Estonia, who he there was a bunch of Rotarians wanted to go in and listen to the conversation, but the president of Estonia says, "I'd like to talk to the Rotary president alone." And I went in there, sat down. He said, "I understand the Rotary believes in peace in the world." I said, "Yes, that's one of our goals." He says, "Well, what will you do to help us get the Russian soldiers out of Estonia?" Well, some questions are difficult, and then there's easy ones like that. Many national leaders have high expectations of Rotary's influence in the world. Another memory of one of these visits is the King of Thailand. I had been briefed that we'd have about 10 minutes with the King of Thailand. His Majesty be my Rotary host was Bishai Radical, who later became president of Rotary. He had one time served as the deputy prime minister for the king. Now, I generally tried to prepare myself on each of these visits when I'd go into a different country and read up a little bit of what's happening. And I had read about a dispute they had in Thailand between the prime minister and the head of the army, and that they had a big dispute and had tanks coming in and all this stuff. And the president stopped it, and then I saw on CNN the prime minister and the chief general crawling on their hands and knees before the president, or before the king, in the very room that I was in. I remembered this. And then somebody gave me a little folder that told me what the king wrote as how he handled it. Frankly, I had seen all of this before I went there. Now, during this 10 minutes audience that I had with the king, somehow the topic of the uprising came up, and I said, "Oh, I've read your pamphlet that told about it." And he looked me right in the eye and he says, "Well, how do you think I handled that?" Well, we chatted about those events, and he asked me questions about what people outside of his country thought about him, about his country. And finally, the discussion ended and we left. And my friend Bishai said, "That was an amazing conversation." I said, I thought we were there longer than 10 minutes. Bishai says, "Do you realize that the king was talking with you for 1 hour and 20 minutes? You see, the president of Rotary International does more than just give a speech at a convention, but is interpreting this organization of Rotary, and that one was one of the really big experiences in my memory bank. Frequently I've told the story, another story, a memory that I have of Lalita Pratap, who was an ambassadorial scholar from India studying at the University of Pacific when I was the vice president over there. I knew Lalita quite well because she came to Rotary meetings. She had been to our home on several occasions. She was such a charming lady going around the campus in her beautiful saris. And she was studying in the area of handicapped children, speech problems and hearing problems. And towards the end of the year, she came to my office, and people have been saying, "Lalita's trying to find a sponsor to help her stay in the United States. She'll probably visit you." So she came to my office one day, and she said, "Would you help me find a sponsor so I could stay in the United States?" And I said, "Lalita, I'm pleased that you've had a good experience here in the United States and at the university, but I'm not going to help you find a sponsor, nor am I going to encourage anybody else. The Rotarians of India gave you an ambassadorial scholarship to come to the United States. Now's the time for you to go back and help the people of India." Well, the tears poured down this young lady's face, She says, "Oh, I thought you might help me of all people." I said, "No, Lalita, you go back and help the children of India." Well, that would have been the end of the conversation. She went home. We kept in touch with greeting cards for a couple years. She was married and had a family, and it would be the end of the story. But except for about 20 years later, I was in Bangalore, India, to dedicate a Rotary-sponsored hospital for very poor and indigent heart patients and especially children with disabilities. And they had this big ceremony, lots of flowers, lots of banners, as they do in India. Hundreds of people gathered for the dedication, and the district governor said, "Just before we go on the stage, I'd like for you to come over here and meet the supervisor of the hospital." And sure enough, it was Lalita Pratap. And we talked a bit. Tears came down her eyes. And we recalled the days at the university and her Rotary scholarship. And then she said, "Thank you so much for what you did for me that day, to tell me to come back and help the people of India." She gave me a little model of the Taj Mahal, all wrapped up with a ribbon. You see, Lalita had become one of the outstanding leaders of all of India in providing care for children with disabilities. Rotary serves in amazing, amazing ways all over the world. Oh, there's so many events that run through my mind, which I'm not going to try to cover tonight, or today. It's almost night. There was a time at an international assembly when a Rotarian said, "Come on over here. You're new, come and sit at my table." And I sat down at his table, and I soon realized I was talking with past RI President Herb Taylor, the creator of Rotary's four-way test back in the 40s. What a pleasure to know the men and women who are the legends of this organization. One day in Lagos, Nigeria, when I became a full-fledged honorary Nigerian tribal chief, I have amazing tribal robes marked with the occasion. I was rather impressed by the Rotarian in whose home the ceremony was being conducted. He introduced me to his 3 wives, all of whom were wearing identical flowered dress. My thought at the time, what a tremendous guy this is. How in the world can a guy afford 3 wives? Oh, there's so many memories of delivering polio vaccine in the crowded cities of India, remote village huts in the mud in Ethiopia. As president, I remember I planned 16 major events around the world to salute the different programs of Rotary, programs of the different unique programs, youth programs, international programs, and trying to salute all of them. And during a snowy day in New England, we saluted the Rotary fellowship groups. And the one guy who was there, and I gave him a little certificate, paper certificate. And he was the founder, one of the first of all of our fellowship groups, the music fellowship. And tears poured down his face. He says, "Do you know, in 24 years since I formed this Rotary fellowship group, this is the first time anyone has ever said thank you for starting the music fellowship." How often we overlook the words of thank you to our fellow Rotarians because we expect us all to do so many things. A similar occasion when I going down in Australia, and that's a salute was for the RILA program, Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, which started down in Australia. As I met at the airport after an all-night flight from somewhere, my host said, "We have to stop at the hospital before you go to the hotel because one of the recipients of the salute is critical ill and he won't be able to attend the awards dinner tonight." We went into a hospital ward and there was a guy hanging on to life. His wife and adult daughter were by his side, and we talked a bit about appreciation of his role in starting the RILA program. And I don't know whether he could understand a word or not. But he took the certificate in his hands. And his wife and daughter were thrilled and expressed their gratitude that I came to see this man personally. That Rotarian, he did recover, and several years later I saw him again and expressed how much it meant to him and to his family of a little hospital villa on the way to the hotel. It's amazing what a little paper certificate of appreciation means to a dedicated Rotarian. If you can imagine, the Rotary president receives many beautiful, unusual, appreciated gifts during the travels all over the world. I know you ladies would appreciate a beautiful Waterford crystal bowl or a silver water pitcher with the district number and the governor's name etched around the side. I certainly appreciate all the thoughtful gifts I received. I'm sure you would have appreciated the handsome gold and silver cremation vase I was given in Mexico. Perhaps you would have enjoyed the gift of a hardened rhinoceros skin. And I'm sure if you come in good, if you were being attacked by a tribe of spear-throwing rebels. But in spite of this beautiful shield made out of this rhinoceros skin, there are other gifts that touch your life. When visiting a little Rotary club down in Costa Rica, Rotary club that had been sponsoring an orphanage home and a rather aging Catholic nun presented me with a small handkerchief, and she had carefully embroidered my name on the edge of this handkerchief. And truly, that gift of loving appreciation for the work of Rotarians in their country and that children's orphanage probably outshadowed thousands of plaques and trophies and other awards. Among all the meaningful experiences of Rotary may have, then perhaps the most lasting are just Rotary friendships. As we take pride in our impressive humanitarian programs, our PolioPlus, our foundation, all the community activities we have, we often overlook the value and the amazing number of friendships Rotary provides each member. People often ask me, why do you go to Rotary meeting every week? And my answer is simple. There's where my closest friends are. And you never know which one of them needs you that day. Just a pat on the back, a warm handshake, a friendly smile, a listening ear. That's Rotary friendship. Never underestimate the tremendous power and value of a kind word, a sincere compliment, or any act of caring. Got it? Okay. These are little acts of kindness and friendship that have lifted my life so much. There's so many hundreds of memories that Rotary have given me. lifting me up in dark valleys that we all go through from time to time, as well as enjoying a lifetime of friendship that comes from just Rotarians meeting and laughing and greeting and enjoying time together. And I'm so thrilled that Bob and Mary Ellen Warner are here. Bob and Mary Ellen flew in for today from Arkansas. I met Bob and Mary Ellen in a rather unusual through Rotary. I was asked to go to a Rotary district conference when Bob was district governor of his district in Arkansas. And it was held in Memphis, and Bob and Mary Ellen met me at the airport. And Bob says, "How you doing?" And I says, "Okay." He said, "Just okay?" I said, "Yeah, just okay." He says, "What's going?" I said, "Well, yesterday we found out that Mary Elena has lung cancer." And Bob says, "Well, let's talk about it. I'm a thoracic surgeon, and I deal with these kind of problems every day." I don't know whether this was some kind of divine intervention or not, but over that weekend, we talked, we became friends over the weekend, and I went home 10 feet tall. That's a lot for a guy of my height. Wonderful friendships that we've retained over the 6 years that Mary Elena continued to live. We've spent many times together. You see, just as vivid as all the Rotary memories that you have are the memories of the hundreds of close friends that you can meet through Rotary in a room like this today. Rotary friends that are the rarest kind of dividends of all your Rotary experiences, all the humanitarian things. And can you believe, for me, all of these memories, all of these friendships started right here, a few yards away on this university campus 60 years ago when Johnny Siegel invited me for a free lunch at Berkeley Rotary. Thank you all for your kindness, and I love you all. To say this really is my last speech.
Cliff, you've been a gift. And I'd like to present the contribution to the Mary Elena Scholarship Fund. It's small. I had a big crystal ball with my picture and my name engraved, but I left it in the car. I think you'll like this a lot more.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you all for being willing to listen to an